Good morning, and I am Ellie Braxton Levine, and I am the President and CEO of the Coppell Chamber of Commerce. And we are thrilled to present to our members our new Meet the Candidates series. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to Ricardo Roberto. He is a business owner here in Coppell. He owns RA Financial, and he will be conducting the interviews with our current Texas House Representative Julie Johnson, and she is represented for District 115. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Ricardo. Oh, I do want to emphasize that this recording will be available on our social media. It will be available through our newsletter, and it will be available on our website. So if you miss it or you want to watch it again, also there will be no edits to this recording. And our goal here is for you to meet Representative Johnson and get to know her, and so you can make an informed decision. So over to you, Ricardo, and I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Representative Johnson, for taking this time with us. We have prepared several questions for each candidate, and all of the candidates were provided these questions beforehand, but we also wanted to give each candidate the opportunity to make a quick presentation to start, introduce themselves and the issues that they feel are most relevant to the campaign. So everyone gets 5 minutes. So Representative Johnson, I'm going to start stopwatch here in just 2 seconds, but please introduce yourself and the issues you think are most cogent.
Great. Well, as you know, I am Julie Johnson, and I am your state representative. I was elected in 2018, as most of you probably know. I really had a wonderful time this past session. You know, it was really interesting to learn the workings of the Texas legislature and how to be effective. And I believe I was able to figure a lot of that out. You know, we were able to pass a transformative education bill that really meant a lot of help for the Coppell Independent School District. I was able to really closely partner with Superintendent Hunt as that bill was progressing to make sure that we were able to leverage the provisions of that to really maximize the benefits to the city of Coppell. We were able to lower your property taxes and also increase revenue to the school district. So that was just an incredible bill. We were also able to provide mandatory pre-K for certain economically leveled people. So for example, one time I was touring Wilson Elementary, and the principal there looked over and there was a whole classroom of pre-K kids who wouldn't have had the opportunity to have that education. And he looked over me and goes, "You made that happen." And you know, that made me feel really, really good, because I feel like when we educate our young people, we give them the path to independence and financial security. And we need to make sure that our children are reading literate by the age of 3rd grade. And not every child has the same opportunities in their home from womb to 6. And so to be able to have mandatory pre-K for those that need it was really powerful, and I felt like was one of the best things that we were able to accomplish last session. Additionally, I really focus on healthcare. That's where I find my personal body of work. I was on the insurance committee and the judiciary committee last session and was able to pass a number of healthcare related bills that really address the issues of folks that have insurance to make it easier to utilize that insurance. Avoid out-of-network billing, surprise billings when you go to a facility and you don't have in-network providers. And I passed a network transparency bill signed by the governor that will really assist in that regard. So I'm running again because I feel like I can continue to make a difference. I was effective, I reached across the aisle, I made great relationships and legislated in a bipartisan fashion. And I do believe that that's what we need from everyone. Republican or Democrat, you should be able to work together and not legislate from the fringes, but legislate from the middle. And that's certainly what I've done. As a result of that, I was awarded the Texas Monthly Freshman of the Year for that collegiality and that ability to reach bipartisan agreement. And I've received numerous endorsements because of that. And I will continue to bring that philosophy to the Texas legislature. I think there's a lot of common ground that we can work on, and I intend to continue to work on that next session. Hopefully, if I'm reelected, I hope that I will be, and look forward to doing that. So there we go.
Okay. Well, you've got 2 whole minutes left. If there's anything you wanted to add, but if not, then we'll go into the questions. And the first one is fairly straightforward. Why are you running, and why should voters choose you over your opponent?
Well, I just think, like, just to summarize what I just said, you know, I'm running to continue my ability to work to improve issues that are critical to the citizens of Coppell, the businesses of Coppell, and the citizens of the state of Texas. You know, we must address healthcare. Last session, we needed to address education. The session before, where my predecessor was there, they couldn't pass hardly anything. They managed to pass a $300 million Band-Aid to education and made no real improvements. This past session, the legislature became more bipartisan. We flipped 12 seats. This is one of them. And as a result of that, it really forced, I think, both parties to work together, to come together and actually pass something meaningful for education in the state of Texas. We need to do that same kind of collaboration on healthcare. Texas is dead last in terms of persons with access to care. We have the largest insurance gap of any state in the country. We have over 5 million people that don't have access to quality health care. Our regulations and requirements are so burdensome on physicians and healthcare providers. We need to remove some of those barriers that will improve their ability to provide care to people and lower costs. I mean, we've got to address healthcare. It affects every single member of the person in this state, every one of us. And, you know, I think this pandemic has really highlighted the need for comprehensive healthcare and what that means to us as the public greater good when people don't have access to care, when people don't have access when they're sick and we're in a public health pandemic and they don't have access to routine care to help, you know, minimize exposure, minimize things. And so it's really highlighted the needs for us to address that. And I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to prioritize that next session.
Okay. You've been emphasizing healthcare, obviously, and other than that, what issues do you feel are most important to our local business community in this economic environment? And it is quite a challenge, especially for small business.
Of course.
And what can the legislature do to help local businesses?
Sure. I think, I've met so many local business owners and talked to them about what their concerns are. And, you know, the reality of it somewhat varies industry to industry. And what industry you're affiliated with is the level of impact that you've had from this pandemic. The one aspect that transcends every business industry is stability and continuity. That our governor has been a yo-yo with policies. Are we masking? Are we not masking? Are we going back to, are we opening? Are we not opening? And the lack of predictability has been one of the biggest problems for businesses in terms of being able to plan and act appropriately. Obviously, we need to look at safely reopening, minimizing this, being able to clamp down on this public health crisis and get it behind us as quickly as we can so that we can safely reopen all businesses. I mean, we have to have a vibrant business culture for our economy to succeed. And local businesses are the most driving engine of that. So, you know, I think we've really tried to work on making sure people have benefits during this time. Like my office has worked extensively with the unemployment claims to make sure people have been able to secure their claims. There's been a lot of bureaucratic quagmire, and that's really meaningful. So, you know, and when I visit with a local restaurant, for example, and they had to shut down for a while, they were very concerned about their staff, their employees. How are they going to pay their rent? You know, it's a snowball effect. When people don't have the resources to continue on with their obligations, then that landlord has a problem. And then when that landlord has a problem, then that financial institution has a problem. When that financial institution has a problem, then their employees get laid off. And then it starts yet another cycle. You know, it's having predictability and having stability of benefits in the workplace is one thing that we've really tried hard to do. To make sure that we can weather this storm as possible and really demand more transparency and a dedication to stopping the pandemic spread and stopping this virus so that we can move behind it. And we've been really vocal about that with the governor's office and really trying to make sure that we give the resources to schools to reopen safely. Childcare is a critical piece. So many businesses don't have their workforce because of childcare issues. And the back and forth on whether childcare facilities can open and care for children so that parents could go back to work and work in the workplace is a very big problem. And I do believe that figuring out childcare is something that the legislature needs to take a look at It's one of the single biggest economic drivers in our economy and ability and prohibitions of people entering the workforce. So I think those are all things that we need to look at to help businesses.
And just concretely then, and these are really big issues. And it's always been rather a challenge in Texas because we have sessions every other year and a fairly short legislative calendar. So what would be the first 2 or 3 bills that you would file? How would you advance them and pay them? And could they impact these issues that you've just raised?
Right. Well, I think that this upcoming session is going to be crazy. We have a significant budget shortfall. We're going to have to address that and look for ways to plug that gap. So at the same time, while there's a lot of things that, I think members would like to file, the fiscal responsibility of that is going to be very important, and to make sure that we have, reasonable fiscal outcomes, because we are in a budget shortfall. So you have to be realistic about what one can and cannot do. Having said that, one of the first bills that I want to file is a telemedicine bill. And I've been working very closely with the Texas Medical Association about making telemedicine permanently covered under our health insurance, so that patients can access physicians' telemedicine and physicians can provide care via telemedicine and get paid for it. I think that's a critical piece. One of the benefits of this economy, and Governor Abbott has extended orders requiring insurance companies to pay for telemedicine, but it's really opened up the opportunity for care. And one of the groups that I've heard so much about in favoring telemedicine are teachers. It's very difficult for them to take off school, but they can carve out a 15 or a 30-minute break to have a telemedicine appointment with their physician. And I think it just really opens up and changes how people go to the doctor, and just in business in general. So if you have an employee that needs a doctor's appointment, wouldn't it be great for them to be able to just say, rather than have to take off, drive to the doctor, wait in a waiting room for how long, have the appointment. It's a half day to go see a doctor under current times. But with a telemedicine program, there's so many things that can be addressed, medication refills, all sorts of issues that could be much more efficient for our healthcare system, efficient for our workforce. So that's going to be one of the first things I do. A second bill repeats kind of what we were able to pass out of the House, but it died in the Senate, which relates to prior authorization requirements. There are many, many coverages under our health insurance code that are mandated to be covered by your health insurance policy, but still they require you to go through these burdensome prior authorization requirements to get approval to go and have these policies. Well, it is absolutely ridiculous when they're required to cover it. So let's just take mammograms, for example. Mammograms are mandated to be covered for women and in a health insurance policy. Well, every single time that they want to schedule that mammogram, they have to call and get permission from the insurance company to schedule that. Well, it only delays the care, it delays getting the test performed, and it requires physicians' offices to have 3 extra employees on average to deal with all of these requirements, which only makes our healthcare more expensive. It's absolutely insane. I mean, I think physicians should be able to order a test, and the patient should be able to go get it, especially on routine procedures that should not be that hard to access the health benefits that we all pay for and that we all need. And so it should be a lot more efficient and easier to use. So there's that. And then on a local issue affecting the city of Coppell, I've had multiple meetings with Mayor Hunt and with Mike Land, the city manager, about different issues that are affecting the city of Coppell. And there's the Coppell Street Maintenance Tax to make that to where it can allocate over a 10-year period versus the current 4-year period, which would allow the city to really structure critical infrastructure needs and make it a major, logistics hub by DFW and all the things that it needs. And there's no fiscal notes to our state budget for all 3 of those policies. And then defensively, obviously, there's an attack on Coppell's sales tax revenue from destination to origination taxing. And so we've had extensive meetings with Coppell, and it also affects Carrollton and a lot of the cities in our district, actually, and partnering with other representatives who represent areas where this has a dramatic effect in order to try to minimize the damage done to our local economy from that. So those are several issues. And of course, it's a redistricting year. So we're going to be waiting the census numbers and see what's going to happen in a district line. One of the things that's interesting is in my district, our district, House 115, we've had the largest population growth of any of the districts in Dallas County. And so we're right at that point, for that 5% growth margin where we may have to lose some of our district area and redistrict that to other seats. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because there's other districts that have lost population, but House 115 has gained the most and has had the most growth. And I think it's had the most growth because we have the Coppell Chamber, we have the Farmers Branch Chamber, we have MetroPress Chamber, we have a strong business culture, we have excellent school systems here, and it really motivates people to want to move to this part of Dallas County. But redistricting is certainly going to be one of those critical issues as well.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is just concretely, you think that there are 4 or 5 pieces of legislation that you'll be working on specifically, 2 which are healthcare, and then 3 others which are largely local issues.
Well, we have a bunch of other things too. I think we have a package of about 50 bills that we're looking at to get filed. A lot of dealing with insurance regulation, maternal mortality, a lot of other things. But you asked me for my top 3. So.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, and then I kind of want to jump to the last question here, because you'd raised the issue. We have critical issues right now, and you've raised them and emphasized which ones that they're going to be priority for you. But you've also said that we have a bipartisan atmosphere, and that is where you feel that you've been most effective. Do you anticipate that in fact the environment is more bipartisan, and how do you plan to use this next session in a bipartisan fashion to accomplish these things that you're raising?
Well, absolutely. I think it's going to be more bipartisan. I think, there's been a lot of discussion about the House races in Texas and whether or not the Democrats are going to flip the Texas House or not. And all of that's been widely discussed in politics and on the papers and everything else. And I do think that the Democrats are going to pick up seats. I think there are a lot of vulnerable Republicans, a lot here in the Metroplex. But what that's going to do is that's going to bring the chamber that much closer together. I think neither party is going to have a clear majority. I think however it shakes out, one party or the other will have a seat or 2, maybe majority, which is going to force bipartisanship in order to get anything done. We just are going to have to work together. Unfortunately, and I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. I think we should govern from the middle and govern from the center. I think that promotes really good policy that benefits everyone. I think when we govern from the fringes and we govern from the edges, it creates real division, divisiveness, and it's not good policy. So, I think having a close house is a great thing, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm excited about it because, many of my moderate Republican colleagues who I have developed great friendships with are going to return. They're in safe seats. And I'm looking forward to working with them and partnering with them. So for example, on the telemedicine bill, I'm looking forward to partnering with Price on that. And we have Republican colleagues. I have some insurance bills that I'm targeting, that I'm working with Republicans on from the Gulf Coast. And so, I think it's great to be able to have friends that you socialize with. I have drinks, I have dinner with these folks. We're friends. We've gotten to know each other. They've met my kids and everything else. And, it's important that we remember that we're all people. We all have families that we love. We all work. We all have communities that we care about. And we have more in common than we have uncommon. So I think there's a lot that we can do together. And I think having a closely divided House in margins of numbers, Republicans and Democrats, is good. I think it promotes a culture of collaboration and coalition building, because neither side can really just get there completely on their own.
And does this bipartisanship, is that something that you see? Coppell has 2 different representatives. So, different small pieces of Coppell are under the, are in different districts. And do you see the bipartisanship sort of extending to help us in terms of making sure that our local issues are better represented, not just by yourself, or the person who represents District 65, Representative Beckley, but do you see other communities around us facing the same issues and that giving us a little bit more power to support the local issues that we're confronting?
Well, like everything, every issue has different coalitions. And, if with respect to certain local bills, for example, some of the Republican colleagues, like the maintenance tax issue, that's a unique issue to Coppell. It doesn't affect anyone else. It's a bill that really just affects how we tax ourselves locally. And my Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues should not care about that. The difference is I need to be able to support their local issue that doesn't affect us. It's just their local issue. I need to be able to say, of course, if you have this local issue that your community wants, and this is how you view it, and this is what your local folks, of course, I'll support you, but I need you to support me in my local issue in taking care of my district. And I think that's why relationships are important, because if I didn't have that ability, then nobody would care about my little issue with Coppell. But when you care about other people's and they care about yours. And so that's why relationship building in the House is just fundamental to being able to be effective on a local issue. And then you also find commonality of purpose and interest. So obviously, let's just take the destination origination tax issue. That's very, very important to Coppell. It's very, very important to Round Rock. It's very important to other parts of the state. So reaching out to those representatives as well and forming a coalition of common interest, that's how things get done. And quite frankly, that's how the majority of the legislature works. It's really not Republican or Democrat per se. I mean, on certain key issues, yes, but on a lot of issues, it's urban versus rural. There's all sorts of ways that perspectives divide based on a point of reference. So like on my telemedicine bills, the rural caucus is very interested in supporting that because they have a complete critical shortage of access to healthcare specialists, and they want telemedicine. They want that care for their people. So there's all sorts of issues that bind people together. It's being able to be in the room, talk to your colleagues, meet with them, find common ground, work together on a variety of issues, and get your stuff passed. And that's what I've been trying hard to do.
And that does raise the whole issue of, when you talk about rural versus urban, sort of state, senior levels of government seem to have an ideology which brings into conflict between local and state. Which elected officials do you trust most, local, state, or federal, to know the needs of our community?
Oh, good Lord, the local. I think Mayor Hunt is awesome. I think, Coppell is very lucky to have her. And there's some, and Dr. Hunt on the school board. You guys have an incredible school board members, you have incredible mayor and city government. And so, of course, and I meet with them frequently. And during the session, I tried very hard to be, we had, during a lot of the bills, we had text change. I was on them texting off the House floor, hey, this is what's happening, really keeping them in the loop so that I could understand and get their value and their input on how this would affect our local economy. But you have to have trust relationships at every level of government to be effective. We have to have trust relationships locally. I have to have trust relationships with my state peers, and then I have to have relationships with people that I can work with on a federal level, because different issues require different partners and involvements. But in terms of who knows what's best for the citizens of Coppell, that would be our local folks. And that's why I try to keep a very close bridge of communication and reach out to them frequently, especially during the session, so that we can work together. That's how it should be. We represent the same people. We should be able to work together. And we do, actually. We have a great relationship.
Okay. Just to take that just a little further, what is your take on the animosity that seems to be present from certain members of state legislature towards cities and counties?
It's absolutely, it's ridiculous. It's just political gamesmanship, and it absolutely makes no sense, and it's arguments of convenience. I think at the end of the day, we have, very conservative Republicans, especially in our governor, who I don't agree with much on, but that should be no surprise to the viewers of this program. But, for example, just, he could not possibly exercise any state leadership to have any, coherent policies, and kicks the cans down to the local folks and say, okay, it's up to our local leaders to solve this problem. But when they try to solve a problem that they politically disagree with, and oh no, those local leaders shouldn't have that authority to solve that problem. It's hypocritical, it's inconsistent, it makes no sense. And at the end of the day, I'm a strong supporter of local control. I believe that our local leaders should be able to solve local problems regardless of what those issues are, and whether or not I politically agree with it or not. It should be within their rights to control. And if the voters don't like it, then you don't have to vote them in. That's the ultimate local control, is the power of the vote. And so, that's really how local control works. And so I believe I do not understand why they developed this program. I think it's just that cities and counties have stood up for themselves and stood up for advocating for policies that benefit their community, even though Dan Patrick may not agree with that or may not like that. And so it's unfortunate that animosity developed. It's unnecessary, it's reckless, it's irresponsible, and we need to elect people that will support a harmonious working relationship between cities, counties, and the state government, because we all serve the same people.
Let's go to the budget. We're going through a period when companies, families, government are all stretched because of the pandemic. How do you feel that the budget is going to affect, and require prioritizing in terms of legislation and spending and transportation, education, criminal justice, versus just the inability really to finance certain issues?
Well, it's going to be a tough budget. It's going to be a really hard session, I think, economically, and having to make tough choices of what we have the money, what we can afford to pay for, and what we can't afford to pay for. So I think there's a variety of ways of looking at it. Obviously, one is you look at areas where spending can be cut and areas where spending can't be cut. My opinion, we can't cut spending for education. That is fundamental to the success of our economy, to our culture, to our society. When we have a strong educated population, we have strong workforce, we have independent people who are not dependent. It's just critical that we maintain our education funding. So we have to look at other areas of spending. There are $45 billion of tax avoidances, tax savings, tax exemptions, tax discounts. We are only facing a $5.7 billion budget deficit based on Comptroller Hager's current projections. So even if that's the first place I would start, is who's not having to pay their fair share of taxes that the rest of us are. And a lot of those tax loopholes and tax exemptions are really old, they're outdated. They don't merit the same based on technological advances of processing, of industry, of all sorts of things. So I would start there, going through the list. And in fact, I know that the Democratic caucus has charged a committee to review all of those exemptions to come up with proposals of things that we can do to eliminate there, so that we don't have to cut critical spending for so many critical agencies that are so dependent on our state budget. So there, and then I think obviously we have the Economic Stabilization Fund. As if our economy, this is what it's here for. It's based on oil taxes that go up and down. They're not guaranteed; they fluctuate, which is why they were put in that fund, because you couldn't. It was very clear, and our forefathers of legislators really were brilliant when they came up with that fund. I think to not put oil revenues in our planned state budgets because of the great fluctuation of that. They put it over here in the savings account for times just like this, where our economy needs stabilized because of natural events, and we certainly have suffered that. So that's certainly an option to see how that's going, and just look at, and then if there's other revenue source generations that we need to take a look at, obviously critically evaluate that to make sure they're absolutely necessary and fair. So I think you just have to take a comprehensive, holistic approach to the budget, and it's going to be, and then we also have to just get Comptroller Hager's actual budget predictions. And, we don't really know what the numbers are. Our economy has certainly rebounded over the last couple of months from when some of these early projections were made. So once we get into session, we'll get those numbers, and then we'll have a much better perspective on what our budget needs to do, what work we have to do for that.
Okay. I think we're pretty much out of time. Is there anything you'd like to say just briefly as we conclude this?
I just want to say, thank you to the Coppell Chamber. I mean, you guys are amazing. You're strong advocates for business in our community. And it's wonderful that you're here doing the work that you're doing, making it a community for business and a community for people to be engaged. I've always been pleased to help acknowledge successful businesses of the year and reward folks and acknowledge jobs well done and for people who've made an impact in the community. And I appreciate that ability, and I look forward to doing that again. I just think at the end of the day, my message to people is vote. Policies matter, and persons in office matter. And I hope that you find that I have a reasonable approach. I'm a business owner myself. I've owned my own business for 25 years. I've employed people. I've had to go through all of the issues about managing and marketing and dealing with a business during up times and down times. And I've had to, like myself, like many of you, manage my own business during this COVID time and have to figure all that out. So I understand where you are. I understand the needs of business and what it takes. And I look forward to having your support and returning to Austin to continue this journey together. So thank you so much for letting me be here today.
Thank you so much for taking the time with us. And I don't think we can emphasize enough that every citizen's obligation and duty is to vote. And certainly in such a hyper-partisan environment, what we want is people to look at the real issues and think of the best way that we can use our vote to support our communities and our nation. We're going to push everybody to
I'm going to add one thing, just that early vote starts October 13th. There's 3 weeks to early vote, and I'm really pleased that the governor did extend early vote by a week. It does give people the opportunity to go and vote as safely as possible. The new Coppell Arts Center, which is a magnificent space, is going to be one of the early vote locations, along with the Valley Ranch Library. Those are the 2 early vote spots that are closest. And I really encourage people to, take your mask. The election workers are very concerned. Be respectful of them and their health as well. Take your mask, vote, go early, avoid the lines, and make it to where those that need to vote on election day, where that may be the only day that they have for a variety of reasons, they don't have to wait in a giant line to go and vote. So if you have the ability to go early, please do so.
Definitely. And I would just say for viewers, go to www.coppelltx.gov and you will find voting information there. We encourage everyone, please go out and vote.
That's
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Do we say cut? What do we say, Ellie?
I'm sorry, I'm still muted. Thank you so much, Representative Johnson. I really enjoyed listening to you. And thank you to all of the viewers. Like she said, please get out and vote. I think mail-in voting starts October the 1st. Is that correct? Right.
Well, people have already received their ballots, so you can go ahead and fill them out. There's a lot of concern about ballot security. And the post office, they deliver millions of pieces of mail every day. We have excellent men and women working in our post office. Mail your ballot early so that they have a chance and an opportunity to process it. That's the best thing. Just don't wait till the last day.
Right.
Vote and put it in the mail. It'll be fine.
It is such a privilege to be able to vote. And again, thank you so much, Representative Johnson, for this. Thank you, Ricardo, for taking your time. I know you both are very busy people. If you all have any questions, any of our viewers have any questions, you can call us at the Coppell Chamber, 972-393-2829, or visit our website at coppellchamber.org. Thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thank you very much.